It's about the patient's experience. It's about the clinical outcomes. And then it's about the profitability in treatment that way. So when we can have all three of those align, then you have a very balanced, healthy practice, whether you're an independent practice, a group, or an OSO. We were valued about $2.5 billion. So it's pretty incredible. It's incredibly humbling to see, growing from a small practice in 2009 to that point with all the incredible partners and everybody that we have, and never would have dreamed.
Today, I have a friend, somebody I really respect, technically my boss, Dr. Scott Law, co-founder of Smile Doctors. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, it's an honor to be on again with you, Glenn, and all your listeners. So,
yeah, two-time champion, returning champion. But for anybody out there who's not aware of who Scott Law is, you're going to learn a lot about his story today. And as you heard me reference just a few moments ago, our lives are commingled now because Doug Shaw, my partner, best partner in the world, and myself, we actually partnered with Smile Doctors. It's coming up on about 1.5 years now. And so technically, this is my boss right here, but he's a benevolent and kind boss. I just want to say that.
Thanks, Glenn. There's always a goal of mine is to be, it's interesting. Yeah. Through my, I guess, personal development, one of the things that started me on this path was to be a good boss. I can tell you that story with, from a little kid, and my dad and everything. It was interesting, but it's a good one.
Well, you are. You're great. And again, it's a great opportunity. I want to make it clear to everybody who's listening here, this is not going to be the Smile Doctors podcast today. That's not what this is about. For those people who've heard of Scott Law or seen him speak at Orthopreneur Summit last year, you spoke for us, which was in Austin, was great. And, you heard his story, and he has so much wisdom to share and such great stories to share that you will hear us talk a little bit about Smile Doctors as a broader understanding of how OSOs and DSOs work and some of the things that helped me in my decision about why I chose to go that path. And as we always reference, or I've always referenced, when you show that famous photo of Michael Phelps winning, I don't know, his 450th gold medal, whatever it was. And the gentleman from South Africa, I think it was in second place, looking over at Michael Phelps, as Michael Phelps was looking straight ahead only at the victory. I make it clear that while I chose to join Smile Doctors, I don't ever need to or want to put down anybody else, ever. It was the right choice for us. We did interview 5 different groups as we went through the process, and we probably could have been very happy in any one of the other 4, but this is the right one for us. And so as we talk about Smile Doctors today, as we talk about life, it's going to be applicable to most things. I want to get that out of the way first, Scott, if that was okay.
Thanks for doing that. Yeah, you guys are incredible partners, and happy to share any insights that I can about OSOs in general and everything that way.
Yeah, and we're going to dive in a little bit as part of today's talk. And so one of the things is people who hear Scott Law, like when you spoke at Austin and what have you, they immediately associate Scott Law with, Smile Doctors. Oh, he's Smile Doctors. He's Smile Doctors. But there's a lot more to this man than just co-founder of what I would argue is the largest ortho-only group out there, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Are we at liberty to share? And again, I want everybody to know that we haven't sat here and rehearsed this. We talk about general topics and things like that, but are we at liberty to share how big Smile Doctors is now from a quote unquote valuation standpoint? Is that something that we're allowed to talk about?
I think it's out there. So, I mean, this was 1 year ago, and so our value has only grown. But you can Google it and see. We were valued about $2.5 billion. So it's pretty incredible. It's incredibly humbling to see, growing from a small practice in 2009 to get to that point with all the incredible partners and everybody that we have. It's I never would have dreamed.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. And again, you heard that right, about $2.5 billion. Again, I'm gonna throw some little tidbits in along the way for things that, like, if this was like an idiot's guide, like the yellow and black book, I'm the little guy with the pencil head that points his finger up like this and goes point of information or important. So one of the things that we looked at when we were looking at OSOs that was important to us was I wanted to have a partner that was big enough that they've been through it before and that they have the ability to weather an economic storm because of the leadership team they put in place, because of cash on hand, and just because, let's put it this way, if you have an ortho practice that you just opened last week and a huge economic downturn happens, you're going to be a little bit more worried than the practice that's been there for 20 years and weathered a few storms and had leadership in place and money. And I think OSOs are very, very similar in that respect. And that's why we didn't go chasing a lot of the smaller companies. And at the end of the day, we ended up going with the biggest of the bunch, not just because you're the biggest, you have some great partners there. But that was one thing that influenced us, that as you listener out there are thinking about the possibility of joining a group, that's one factor you want to take into play. Do you want something that's younger and newer, or something that's more established and been around for a while? And so let's go back to the very beginning, because I think it's interesting to hear the origin story. People often think that OSOs are cooked up in a private equity boardroom. Hey guys, let's go buy ortho offices. But that's not quite what happened with Smile Doctors, right?
Sure. No, it wasn't how it happened. I think for a long time, there'd been discussions about, hey, let's all combine our earnings and then let's go see if somebody will pay us 13 times and then we can all walk off into the sunset. Right. So it was like no one knew what was going on. I think we were at a study club. It was a Schulman study club, in fact.
What year?
This would have been 2012, I believe. And we were there. There were a bunch of practices. And Schulman's famous for comparing numbers and metrics and, doing an analysis of what best practices, what works. And that was a big appeal of that study group. And so I was anxious to learn. It was my first year in the group. And I really wanted to hear, the secret sauce of everybody's practice. And then they said, okay, we've done the analysis and everyone is in it except for these 6 practices. You guys skewed the curve, and so you're not in it. So we suggest you go and talk outside. And so I was a little bummed out, but then I realized who was in that group, and we went and sat under a cabana and just started talking through, hey, what do you guys do? What are your thoughts? And this is when we kind of dreamed up an idea that maybe we would form something. We would form a DSO. We didn't know what a DSO was. So we met weekly on the phone on Sunday evenings for about an hour. And it took us a year to finally get enough gumption, I believe a year, before we would each invest or commit to investing some money to hire a CEO, at least to start the ball rolling. That never really happened. And so, but it was serendipitous, because one of those practices that I met and got to know very well was Dana Fender and Greg Goggins. And
just two amazing. And for me, I love you, Scott, but the meeting of Greg Goggins and Dana Fender was worth the price of admission alone for me, honestly. They're both become mentors in my life, and remarkable human beings. So sorry for interrupting. Yeah. I just needed to give them a shout out, just as human beings. And after you're done, I'll tell you a little story about Dana that'll be funny.
Okay. But both are huge influences on my life and tremendous. I mean, they wake up every day and they want to be better individuals, better humans, fathers, leaders, people. And that had an impact on me. I saw that was something that I really wanted to get closer to. So I had saved up some money just in my practice, and actually I'd saved up about $4 million. So I had $4 million saved, and decided that shortly after we met as a group, so there was all these orthodontists that met, and we were in Chicago or St. Louis, I believe. So interesting. And Rick Workman, who has done Heartland Dental. So I don't know if this group knows who Rick Workman is, but he's on Series G. So he was the original starter of DSOs back in the 80s.
He's done okay for himself.
He's done all right. Yeah. So Teachers had just funded him for something like $1.3 billion at the time. And somehow he heard that this group of orthodontists were meeting, and he happened to be in the area, and he came and he stopped by to meet us. And it was hilarious. He came in the room and he said, "Wait, you guys are all orthodontists?" He's like, yeah, I hate orthodontists. This will never work. And just kind of challenged us, with this. It was very interesting. And it was interesting to hear his wisdom. We were interesting to hear his perspective on specialists, that they were all subject to the dentist and the dental referrals. And it just kind of lit a fire within me that it was like, you know what? We're not going to be subject to the general dentist. We're going to prove that we can go direct to consumer, that we can market, and we can provide the best possible service to these patients. And that's what I've been doing in my practice anyway. And so I love the general dentist relationships and the referrals that I had gotten, but I also love direct to consumer, and then just an incredible creating raving fans with my patients so that they told their friends and family to come. And that's how we've grown. Anyway, that was interesting to have that challenge from Dr. Workman. And then so shortly after, I think I'd saved up that money, and I hired a CEO named Scotty Hudsmith. And I didn't know that when you hire a CEO, the CEO then hires his whole team. And so it wasn't just one guy that was going to come and kind of be an overglorified, office manager, but he needed a CFO and operations and HR and legal and all that goes along with that in order to run. And so the money that I had saved, and Scotty kind of showed me, he's like, well, all this money that you saved, we're going to spend it all, and it's going to go down to zero, maybe below. We might have to take out some money. And then once we have the infrastructure in place and everything's set, then we would hope that we could get some funding from an outside source, like private equity, perhaps.
So so you lose all your money, and then people think you're attractive.
Yeah, well, but then I have the infrastructure. So I think a lot of docs, that's the misconception, is that, they want a business. And I forget who said it. It may have been Bob Fontana with Aspen, who said that investors don't like to see their business walk home at night. And so if all the business, if everything, all the knowledge, the know-how, everything lies in one person's head, and they go, they're going home, then that's a very risky investment.
That's an ultra key man right there.
Well, yeah. And that's what we all run to a certain extent. And so as independent practices. But as we grow and we become, more and more of an organization with infrastructure, then roles are more specific and specialized. And there's additional knowledge and things just the growth can be multiplied that way. And that's what I saw after we got our team. And so it was very attractive. A few of us founders, Greg Goggins, Dana Fender, myself, we all put our practices together. And then we're able to get outside investors who believed in what we were doing, the mission, and how we all saw it, that we wanted to love people first and straighten teeth second. And that was truly, the culture is our foundation of who we are. And that was attractive to other orthodontists to come on and join us, even though we were making big mistakes from the operation side at that time, and things that we've learned from. It was very well worth it. And that's kind of how we started back in September of 2015.
Wow. So Smile Doctors technically started September of 15.
Yep. That's right.
I didn't know that. Cool. Yep. Did you have the ability to look at the bigger companies like Heartland and Aspen, who are dental, almost entirely dental? Did you have the ability to learn from their mistakes, or was it something that they were really different? Because the reason I ask it is because, I'm going to ask you that question first, and I'll come back, because it's going to put the cart before the horse if I talk about it now. So did you have the ability to learn from the mistakes that they had made, or did you not even have access to their mistakes?
Not a whole lot. I think we had access. So Scotty, our CEO at the time, he had learned a lot of mistakes from healthcare, from medical healthcare. And so he had been a part of that before coming over to dental. And so we knew some missteps, but I think the attitude, which is what's fascinating, and this appealed to me even more, the attitude in medical was that, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but in general, so that doctors are a liability instead of an asset. that doctors are a necessary kind of, I don't want to say evil, but kind of, in order to have that run.
Yeah.
And the difference of what we wanted to create was, no, we want the doctors at the center of this. That doctors, it's very interesting how people choose their healthcare provider versus their orthodontist or their dentist, in that level of care. And so we wanted to really safeguard that our doctors make the decisions, that we support them, that this truly is an orthodontic support organization, and one that supports that local orthodontist to continue to be the face and the reputation and all the great things that we know and that leadership provides as that doctor to grow the practice.
Well, you segued beautifully without us ever knowing right into where I wanted to go.
Okay.
Which is that while you didn't have the ability to learn from the mistakes of those who came before you, you were essentially the first OSO, right? The first ortho only support organization, right? There was maybe some orthos in other organizations that we all have seen out there where it was an ortho or some ortho, but the predominant mix of things was generally restorative dentists, general dentists. And then Smile Doctors in September 15 becomes the ortho only group. And now there's more than I can even count who have all seemed to learn from your path along the way, because you just segued perfectly into it. You want your doctors to be the face of the organization. Mm-hmm. But I can attest to the fact, because of people like Dana and Greg and yourself, that people always mattered before everything. And I've seen that. People out there don't get to see behind the scenes, obviously, like the way I get to. And I've seen cases where people matter first, period. Right? Examples would be during COVID and your policies towards your team members during COVID and how people were taken care of. It's crystal clear that people came first, and that's important. But the name on the building wasn't always the name of the doctor. Right. No. And I think it's important to people to know that a lot of the models they see today in the orthodontic, the OSO world, came because of the pivot that Smile Doctors made. And if you want to talk a little bit about that, because everybody out there today, and I can't think of an exception, who is considering an OSO or is part of an OSO, almost every one of them, the name on the building remains Krieger Orthodontics or Shaw Orthodontics or Smith Orthodontics or Law Orthodontics. But it wasn't always the case. And I believe they all learned it from what Smile Doctors did. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I'd love to. No, I think looking back, you have the good fortune of hindsight's 2020. You can look back and see that mistakes that we made. And it's a parallel in my own life. If we look at it, we just thought that we had the best mousetrap, that it was the easiest way to do it, that we could go and just kind of stamp things out because it worked for a handful of locations. And I really think that ignorance and pride are the downfall of so many great things. And if I look back, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I thought that I did it the best. I mean, that was kind of the general sentiment, that if we all put everybody, all these new practices that join us in red t-shirts with stars and change the name on the front of their building away from all of the goodwill and reputation that they've been building for 15 or 20 years to this new name, then that it would go over well. And it didn't go over well. It went over well in some locations. It went great. In others, it didn't. And so I go back to kind of the ignorance piece. I think that the more that we learn about what other people are doing, and the more that we see that there's more than one way to skin a cat. Now, there's generally better ways and perhaps a few best ways to do it. And there's certainly poor ways to do it. But if you can identify what do those fit within unique markets, unique personalities, unique whatever it may be, if you can find those and support those, then that's the best. And it's actually the most difficult too, because having many ways of doing things within kind of a guardrail, and you have all these different ways where we allow we want to hear and see and understand doctors with making decisions on how they market, how they brand, how they clinically treat all of this. We have to be able to support all these things, so we have to be pretty quick on our feet. But that's the best way, and it also allows for people to really be humble, to understand that there's somebody who's doing it better than me. And I see doctors who join us. I see all kinds. I see some who join us and who are very, very committed to their ways. And then I see others who, throughout their whole practice career, have always changed and evolved. And they've always been open to something new, something better. And so that for them, there's no sacred cows. And if we're able to be open to learning from others at all times and learn something, whether it's something small, something big, whatever, and we're willing to pivot on behalf of the patient and the clinical outcomes, their experience, and then the overall profitability, those docs are by far the most successful. And whether that doctor is an independent practice, a group practice, part of an OSO, those docs, they are by far the most successful practices.
Hey everybody, tickets for Summit 2025 are on sale now. Take a listen to what some of the attendees from Summit 2024 had to say.
This is one of the most unique, most impactful meetings that you can go to as an orthodontist.
It has everything compared to other meetings: entertainment, the content in the meeting, the speakers, the food.
I learned a lot. It helps the practice, so it really kind of checks all the boxes.
You hope to get something out of it that is going to pay dividends for years to come.
Definitely return on your investment.
We take back a lot to our office.
You get information that you probably don't get easily at any other meeting.
And you know, the interesting thing is there's a discussion point out there. There's an argument, if you will, about autonomy, right? If I ever hear the word autonomy again, and like it's too much. And I think the underwriting factor, and again, this isn't smile doctors, this is everybody, right? And I firmly can speak on behalf of everybody out there, from every OSO, DSO. DSO might be different, but for every OSO, they want you to keep autonomy. They're not buying a robot. They're not buying, and they don't want a partner that's a dollar sign. They want a partner who is successful in building a practice. So when you partner with an OSO, the most valuable asset is the doctor. So what sense would it make for any OSO to suddenly say, great, welcome to the partnership, now do things our way? Yeah. Right now, there are places you must do things that way as part of an organization, practice management systems or things along those lines, right? Financing, the way the financing happens. But other than that, they want you want us to continue doing what we've been doing to become successful enough that you wanted us to be a partner in the first place, right? I tell people, imagine that you dated your spouse, your significant other for a year or 2 or 4, and you fell madly in love with them. And then all of a sudden you married them and said, I want you to change and be a different person. It would make no sense whatsoever. Do you disagree with that?
I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. And it answers a lot of questions. I think back in the day, we'd get this was like our number one question. And they'd be like, so you're just going to buy me and then you're going to fire me and you're going to bring in somebody cheaper. And right. I'm going, well, that would be about the stupidest thing we could do. Would be, pay you a ton of money and then have you leave. And all the brand equity, everything, all the reputation just goes right out the door. We don't want that. We're looking for partners. Right. We want somebody who's gonna dig in through good times and bad, and who's gonna add value to the rest of us. We want to know, what do you do that's special? What works, and come with that humble heart, willing to learn, willing to share, willing to understand, and it works. I think one of the points that you talked about, doctors are very smart, very smart. When we chose a path, perhaps one of the most difficult paths there are to become an orthodontist, and you have to be number one for years in your class through all sorts of things in order to arrive, and work very hard to get to that. And it's also been said that many of the business people, whether they're running some of these organizations or a part of private equity groups, they're also extremely smart. They just chose a different path. And I think that either could with enough dedication could have crossed over early to pursue whichever route. And so what's fun is now on the doctor side, we're able to educate our docs to be able to go, hey, look, this is how we look at these numbers. This is how the analytics shake out. What do you see? What do you think? How does all of this come into play to the benefit of the patient? What are some clinical decisions that you can make that would be the best optimal for the best outcomes, for the best overall patient experience, and then for the highest profitability? So it's a win-win-win all the way around. That's what we're after. And we search for partners who want that, who want to understand, want to learn, and who aren't afraid to make changes so that everybody wins.
Yeah, and it's important to stress that there are a fair number of people who come to Smile Doctors, and I'm sure other OSOs, asking to be a part of it. And they're told, sorry, not just because your practice is too small, but again, you have to be a good person. And I know it sounds silly to say that, but I've been to some of the meetings and I've met dozens, if not over 100 of our partner doctors. I haven't met a bad person yet. Now that's not to say that they're bad people, but every one of them who I've met at the meetings have been really, really good people. And I think that's something that's been important to you from the beginning is you invest in people, not just the profit. If you invest in the right people, the profit will come. And I think that's true of every business. But one of your mentors is kind of a mellow, easygoing, soft-spoken, bit of a wallflower, if you will. Yeah, we joke because there's one person I know you go and see a great deal who you really like a lot as a mentor. Who is that?
Yeah. So lately, over the last, let's say 2 years, it's Jocko Willink. I've taken great inspiration from him, just as far as ownership of your life, of everything that's going on, that you like or that you don't like. You have full control and influence to change it.
And I joke when I say all those things about him because you and I know who he is.
Yeah.
But if you want to explain a little bit more, what I
Sure.
can say is anybody out there who's ever listened to a podcast of his or read his books, former Navy SEAL, right? Mm-hmm. What else can you say about him?
I've gotten to spend some time with him. There's different courses you can take. There's an extreme ownership muster that you can attend. I think they offer that a few times a year. And then I was really looking into it, reading the books and doing everything to learn all about it, and have taken many of our doctors have gone and attended. And it's kind of a philosophy that we run. Their approach to leadership, whether it's on the battlefield, whatever battlefield you're on, whether it's at home or as a parent or in your business. And they have one course that's one time a year. It's called the Council. And it's 2 or 3 days, and there's 15 or 20 people that get to go and hang out with Jocko and his team. And I really wanted to go. I'd reached that point where it was like, I want to see, is this real? Is he through and through? Authenticity matters a great deal to me. And I was able to hang out from early morning to around the campfire at night, just talking through leadership and challenges and personal development. And I loved it. I loved every second of it. And it just solidified for me the influence that I want to be in my path and ways that I need to grow and work. But I think, to summarize it all, so he's this big dude, 3-time Brazilian black belt jiu-jitsu or black belt Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And he said the number one quality in a leader is, and he kind of left us hanging, and we were all thinking, no fear, all these huge, very aggressive traits. And he said the number one thing in a leader that I want that determines success is humility. And that's how he lived. And that's how he lives to this day. If you listen to his podcast or you see him anywhere on multiple YouTube clips, it's all about that. It's that perspective. And so it resonates very deeply with me. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of his.
And it's interesting because he's so intense. And I've never spent any time with him. I've never taken any of his courses yet. I dive into my coaches, and you have to find that time in your life to be with the next one, right? You move through sometimes you need that entrepreneurship, sometimes you need that life balance, sometimes you need that leadership or management. And I find that if I have too many coaches at one time, the message will get diluted. But he's on my list. It's real interesting to me to hear the story from you, because he's such an extreme individual. He talks about the stories of, the missions he's on. And then on the other hand, it's about humility, right? And hearing you say how real it is really makes it better for me, because it's hard to believe it. And I listen to his stories about what he talks about. And one of my favorite things he talks about is his time in the Navy SEALs is buds.
Yeah.
Right. Because shows have been made about it. And for those who don't understand, it's, I think, basic underwater demolition, I think, is buds, if I'm not mistaken. And that's essentially the first stage of becoming a Navy SEAL. It's the one we all read about. It's the fire hose on the deck. It's the push-ups, the pull-ups, get salty, right? It's getting in the water and
cold water. Yep.
And it's the dropout rate of, 80%. And if you read David Goggins, sorry, not related. But if you read David Goggins, and you read about these stories, that's what everybody makes such a big deal out of. And then if you listen to Jocko, and he says, if you've ever spoken to any SEAL who's been operational, who's been overseas, we don't talk about buds. It's nothing. It's a joke. I love his line, anybody can make it through buds. I don't think anybody can, Jocko, but I love the fact that it's not about making it as a SEAL. It's the difference you made as a SEAL.
That's right.
Right. And I think orthodontists could resonate with that message really well, because all too often there are too many people out there, I believe, who worked so hard to be number one, as you talk about, who ended up making it to ortho residency. And then all of a sudden they take their foot off the gas and they think that the buds, which was making it to be the creme de la creme, to be the elite, and now the journey has ended. Now I'm going to stop working on personal development. Now I'm going to stop working on being a better leader. Now I'm going to stop working on running a better business because I made it.
Yeah.
And it's just very, very interesting to me how that suddenly just happens. And I think it's a great message from Jocko. And just that alone is that great. So you made it to ortho residency. Awesome. Here's 250 or 300 other people this year who made it. Great.
Yep.
But how many people out there who are orthodontists actually talk about how hard it was to get into ortho?
That's right. That's right. No, it's really interesting. One of the things that he talks about, getting to hang out for a couple of days, he said, you always need a mission. And so when they would come home from being deployed, or somebody would retire, or they would get out of the military, it's like, you see people kind of lose sight. What's their goal? What are you doing next in life? And so it was a phrase that they would use, is like, well, you need a mission. What's your mission right now? And it is, for years, we work on focusing to graduate ortho residency. And then I think then we work on, okay, we're going to be successful in practice. And we have this utopia, I believe, that I don't know where it even comes from, but we want this perfect day. We want the perfect schedule, the perfect way to treat, every case to be perfect, and all these things. And so we end up doing exactly what we did to get us through residency, which was do everything ourselves and control every aspect of every single detail. And so we kind of approach people that same way, where we boss all our team around. We tell them every single detail they have to do all the way through, instead of seeing them and being very humble and seeing them as a team that we can influence them to come up with their ideas on how they can execute on what our vision is. And then there's a feedback loop, and we work through it, and then they go and they implement. And you get 10 people around you going and implementing on multiple things. You have so much more power, capacity, and you just grow and grow. And those, again, kind of getting back to what I was talking about earlier, those are the docs that we see are the most successful in anything that they would do. They could be successful in anything they would do, because it all boils down to leadership.
Yeah.
quality of leadership, trusting others, loving others, putting them first, and checking your ego. And so it's a cool thing. I'm a big fan. Yeah. So I'm a big fan, and I use it talking to my kids all the time. It's kind of our language that we speak. Really, I will ask them, I'm like, are you thinking strategically on this, or are you thinking tactically?
I want to sit around the law dinner table.
It's fun.
I want to sit around. And for those who out there who don't know it, Scott has a son who's an amazing football player. And he's getting better. I know we're not going to get into that now, but you've raised, in the little bit I've seen about your family, you live it, man. You live it.
I appreciate it. There's 8 of them. And so, I try not to screw up all 8. We'll see. Hopefully.
Yeah. Mine are older now. And, it's amazing how hard you try not to screw them up while screwing them up, and they don't get screwed up.
Yeah.
That's right. the crazy part of it all. But when you talked about leadership, and the ability to put ego aside and to develop great training and let people do their thing, there's one name that just jumps out instantly as you were talking to me, and he's a partner of ours, and it's Ben Fishbein.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were in an elevator or having drinks, and I'm sorry, Ben, if you're hearing this, I don't mean to embarrass you. This is meant solely as true respect from me to you. He is such a humble guy. And if you talk to him, if you were in an elevator with him for 30 seconds, hey, what do you do? I'm an orthodontist. Really? Like, I have, 5,000 practices, and obviously I'm exaggerating, but his ability to find and empower someone like Amanda Floyd.
Yes.
And the team that they've developed and the way that they've done it together and the role that each of them play. And I have no financial interest, but you should all go take Fishbein Fundamentals. If you haven't done it, Amanda and Ben do an amazing job of helping you understand how their team functions on a day-to-day basis. And not everybody's going to run the same way, but talk about a leader who put his ego aside and empowered the people around him. And so when you're talking, it just jumped out to me. And I'm just proud to call him my partner. I mean, we all aspire to do what he did in 7 years. 7 years.
It is amazing. No, it's amazing what he's done, his way of being with others. And I think if you were on an elevator, and unless you were an orthodontist and he knew that, I don't even know that he'd bring up that he's an orthodontist. He might say, I just do a little business, have some real estate. I don't even know what he would say. He would just totally just check himself. I would say anybody who's been to Fishbein Fundamentals, everybody goes and they want to learn the secret sauce. And I'll tell you what it is what it is. So everyone's going to learn like how they run their new patient exams and how they schedule and all this stuff. But really, if we get to leadership, it is you look and you see the interaction of what takes place and how he empowers. And so that dynamic duo has been together with Amanda Floyd and Ben Fishbein for a little while. And you see Amanda just took how she was empowered by Ben, and she then empowers her team in that same way. And so you just see the impact that leadership has all the way through to where people can make decisions without having to double check all the way back up to the doctor before they can take a step. And that's how he's gotten a machine and has just gotten people who are on fire and passionate and love what they do and see Fishbein Orthodontics as their career instead of just some place to work for a few years or whatever. It's awesome.
It is. And there's a great lesson to be learned. I don't know if he was the one who taught it to me, but someone said, maybe it could have been Gary Vaynerchuk of all people. I don't remember who said it, but he said, if you're unhappy in your life, do more for others. Right? If you're unhappy with your job, if you're unhappy with your practice, if you're unhappy with anything in your life, just start doing more stuff. I think he uses a different word, but start doing more stuff for other people, and suddenly your life will get better. Right. And again, I'll just one lesson I kind of learned from him and Stu Frost, who I respect a ton as well, because they have a lot in common in some respects. One of the things I started doing in my practice is that I stopped making my advice in the morning huddle about the practice.
Mm.
right? Because it's very easy for us to sit there. And I learned this directly from Ben, not words, but just watching and watching Stu and his team. Rather than at the end of the morning huddle, after my team has talked about the starts for the day and talking about production and collections and, the things we want to focus on today and all the things in the practice, the only words I say at the end of the meeting, and I'm not even present for parts of the meeting to make it clear to them that I know I trust them all, is all. And I suggest to everybody out there, try it 1 week, just 1 week, and see what happens. I've made my mission about making my team's life outside the office better.
Mm-hmm.
So I give advice on budgeting, on solvency accounts, on life plans, on anything that has nothing to do with the practice. Zero. I don't say, hey, let's make the practice better by doing this. No, I say, hey, how many of you would not like to think about paycheck to paycheck this time next year? Great.
Sure.
Let's talk about how we're going to make that. Who here would like to travel more?
Yeah.
Who here wants, and once I started doing that, and again, this is not anything special about Glenn. This was watching guys like Stu and yourself and Ben and others. The more you start giving to your team in terms of just love, and again, there are people who are not going to stay on my team. There are people who don't want my love. There are people who don't want to be there. There are people who are never going to motivate themselves to be self-starters. And there are people who are never going to be, and that's okay. At 55 years of age and 30 years plus in dentistry, I've come finally to the realization that it's okay.
Yeah.
That people are going to come and go. And it's not my father's dental practice where the woman he started with when he started practice worked for 35, 40 years, was at my bar mitzvah, was at my wedding. And I still stay in touch with her to this day. Those days are kind of gone. Generationally, they've changed. But that doesn't absolve us from the responsibility of trying to love on them. And the gift is for the giver. And again, I learned that from people like, this is not Glenn Krieger circa 2000 or 2010. It's really come to me in the last 5-7 years as I've been around some amazing people in ortho. And so anybody out there who's unhappy with their life, just heed the words that Scott's giving you here. Heed the words of many others out there and give more. Just do more for others and amazing things will come back to you 100-fold.
I can't agree with you more. It's just invest in your team, like personally.
Yeah.
And yes, they aren't going to stick around forever. It's just people are moving. It's just part of what society is now. Yeah. And we've always just said, okay, if you're going to go somewhere else, if you have to move, you have to go do something else with your career. First, we want you to go and take all the things that you've learned here, and we want you to implement them wherever you go throughout the world, and go be awesome. Go do that.
Yeah.
And my goal has always been, I want to make a generational impact on people. And so I want the things that we talk about in Morning Huddle, just like you're saying, whether it's conflict resolution or it's some inspirational thought or some way that they're treated. I want them to take that, and it's as simple as awesomeness, like share something awesome of what's going on. And then they end up going and they do it around their own dinner table with their kids. Yep. It's a tradition. And then they come back and they're like, this has totally changed my relationship with my teenagers. And I'm like, phenomenal. It brings a tear to my eye, really, that this is what it is. And I hope that continues. How great. The world needs more goodness in it. And so, yeah, that is the position and the benefit that we have to be leaders, bosses, as orthodontists. It's an awesome thing.
And historically, dentistry has attracted, unfortunately, the team we attract is often, unfortunately, a lot of home issues. I remember 30 years ago, before I became an ortho, before I became a dentist, pre-dental school, I remember my father had an assistant who showed up late to work. And he said to her at the time, why are you late? Why didn't you at least call me? And she said, because I don't have the money to buy a phone. Okay, folks, this is that moment again where I hold my finger up and I go like, culture alert. She said, I don't have money to get a phone installed in my house, right? This, by the way, people, there was a world before cell phones. She couldn't afford to have the phone company out and put a phone in her house. My father immediately picked up the phone, called the phone company, paid for a phone to be installed in her house, not so she could call when she'd be late, but because the woman needed a phone in her house. And now even more so, these are unfortunately a lot of the people who are drawn into our practice lives, our paycheck to paycheck, single parent homes, multiple children. And someone else, I don't remember who it was, taught me this, and then we'll move on to something else. But they said, we can't ever forget that we might very well be the best part of our employees' days, that we are the best influences in our employee team members' lives, that they're going home to people who don't care as much about them as we do, where there may not be a mom and a dad at home. There may not be a sibling who's giving great advice. There is no mentor that they sit down with. They're not thinking about a coach. And we have the ability to be the best part of their day. And the next time you want to get angry at your team member, you want to scold them or come down hard on them for something that's really not that bad, just think about the life you're going home to and think about the life they're going home to sometimes. And I think that's a sobering thought for all of us. And now that I brought us down into like the real deep psychology, I want to hit one last thing before we get off here, because I think you're a great resource for this. Private equity.
Yeah.
Boy, we perked that one up. From be a better human being to let's talk money. Private equity is something that I think a lot of people don't know much about. At this point of the game, I think Smile Doctors technically has been through 3 permutations in some way, shape, or form. But I want to say a couple of things about private equity and have you comment on it a little bit, because I think people don't understand the model very well. I've had Jeremy Krell from Revere Partners on here. It's a venture capital fund that helps with startups and what have you in the dental and ortho space, which is very different than private equity.
Yep.
So can you give people a very quick, down and dirty 10-second elevator speech of what is private equity? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I would just say, private equity is much more organized money. And so they have shareholders who invest in them, and so pool all this money and then trust the private equity firm to go and deploy that money with certain investments. And so it's unlike angel investing or venture capital, VC, where they come in and they want to be a part of the board. They want to advise on a very detailed level in certain aspects, to help foresee and look out in front at the macroeconomics that the business may face or may be facing. And so how can they help with financing and some of those other things so that the business has enough equity to continue to grow and do all the things that it does? That's kind of the difference. So you'll see private equity groups are typically much, much larger than venture capital. And so you can have many, many billions of dollars deployed under assets under management, or at a single time. So they can make huge investments in companies. They can buy really big companies. They can get multiple PE groups together to get really big ones. So it all kind of works like that. That's okay. That's it.
It's a great explanation. And when it comes to private equity, I know the answer, but I want to ask you so you can tell everybody out there, is it that you partner with, let's just say Linden Capital, right? Which is an investor in Smile Doctors.
That's right.
They suddenly come in and run the company, right? How does it work, right? Because if I were to become a partner, and again, I want to be clear, this applies to all, with some exceptions. There are some groups out there that are PE free, if you will, right now. But right now, right now is the operative word, because to get big enough at some point, you can't bootstrap forever in most cases. But let's just say for most OSOs right now that are PE backed, people are under the impression that if I join you, now I have to listen to this private equity group. They're going to be in my ear all day long. They're going to be talking to me all day long. What would be your response to that? And again, this isn't Smile Doctors only. This is everybody.
Yeah. So my response would be, well, first, we and Smile Doctors are so blessed to have started on the right foot. It's so important of who's your first. So we had Thurston, which is a company that Dana works very closely with now. We have Thurston, and then Sheridan, then Linden. Linden stayed through this last one, reinvested, and is now joint with TH Fleet. And so we've had multiple, but to start, it was one who believed in who we were and how we were doing things. So our culture, I think it's risky looking back, knowing what I know now. I was a young orthodontist. I had invested and gambled, to put in my infrastructure and all that money and all of that. And then took another big gamble, to go with a private equity group in order to grow us. But they believed in us and believed in what we were doing and why we were doing it. And that started our culture, so that when the next one joined, they liked what they saw. They liked how we were doing it, liked how we were executing, and they didn't try and change our stripes. They just wanted to support us. And so they were able to help where they are experts, and it's on the money side and on all of that, of how the cash flows go with GAAP EBITDA and all the calculations. That was a huge advantage for us. And so currently with our two private equity groups, so we have now Linden and THL. They've been a huge asset to us, from a board level and an advice level of looking ahead. We've now been looking at the current economic environment that we're in and what we kind of see for 2023. We've been making moves for the last 8 months of knowing what's ahead and suspecting what might happen, so that we could hedge in the right way and make growth investments in certain ways and where we need to be conservative in others. And so that's a huge advantage, because then we can focus on the business, right, and focus on, practice and how we can be. Again, I kind of get to the same three things, but it's always about the patient. It's about the patient's experience. It's about the clinical outcomes. And then it's about the profitability in treatment that way. And so when we can have all three of those align, then you have a very balanced, healthy practice, whether you're an independent practice, a group, or an OSO.
And then the last question I'll ask you about equity, as we wind this up, is the most misunderstood part. And again, you mentioned earlier that one of the things you like to do when you bring people into an organization is put them in a place where their superpower is used, right? So for instance, anybody who spends 5 minutes with me knows I'm a connector. I love connecting people. That's why Orthopreneurs has been such a dovetail for my life, because I'm the guy at the party who doesn't care about the party. I care about connecting everybody at the party. Hey, Scott, do you know Dana, and my party experience is bringing people together, not to have a drink in my hand and go crazy at the party, which again, nothing wrong with that. But I love the flow and energy of going back and forth. And so when I came into Smile Doctors, one of the things that I really do a lot is help connect people. And so I've had literally at this point, probably hundreds of conversations with orthodontists who some I steered towards Smile Doctors because I thought it was a good fit. I've made more introductions to people at other OSOs and DSOs because I believe that maybe they weren't a good fit, or maybe we weren't in that area, but I didn't care. I just love talking to people. And the most misunderstood part of the entire private equity-backed OSO, DSO world is I don't understand this whole equity thing. So if I join and I get a $9 million cash deal and $1 million in equity, do I have to wait 20 years for that equity to grow? Does that equity double? Do I not know what it's going to do? What's going to happen? When is it going to happen? And of course, I'm asking some silly questions here because we've been on the other side of it and understand it much better. But again, do you mind just taking a moment or two and explaining to people out there? And again, this is OSO neutral. This doesn't apply just to Smile Doctors. This is but because you're here, you're such a great resource. Sure. If I don't know or understand the concept of how equity works, do you mind going through a quick little explanation of why is there a timeline that it won't be 20 years for most cases, unless something really bad happens? Why is there a timeline associated with that? Number two, I heard you right now, as the recording of this, I believe Smile Doctors is the only OSO that's ever had a equity turn. I don't believe anybody else has actually been through an equity turn with a new partner yet, as far as I know. And so I heard that you guys just went through a transaction. I missed it. I'm too late now. Why should I? Right? I heard that all the time. And I tried to explain to them that it's more like stock and getting in on a ladder, if you will. But if you don't mind addressing those two things, why is there a timeline to equity, right? Where a 3 to 5 year period is usually about where you see things turn. And number two, timing. Does it really matter when you get in? And did you just, the boat left the dock and now I'm stuck here and I don't want to get on the next boat?
True. No, how I would explain it is, it's just like stock. If you were to buy stocks and any sort of make an investment into any business, you want to make it into one that you believe in, that has a proven track record. We've transacted 3 times, and so we've had amazing exits 3 times because of and it's called an exit, or a sale, or there's a lot of slang terms around it, but a financial exit where people are able to take money off the table and cash out, or they can take partial off and then roll forward into the next round again and again. And you want to see the timing matters, because if you're early in the round, then the value of the initial is lower. And so by the time that ramps up towards the end, then you have all that time for your stock to have ramped, and you get a larger multiple on your investment. If you invest right at the end and then there's a little jump, then it's very little. Right. But, as you can start over. And so
and to step into that just for a second, to add to it, if you don't mind. Yep. It's like, if you're there at the beginning when the stock is valued and there's a value at $100, and the exit multiple, it puts you at $1,200, you made 12x on your money. And people think, like you just said, that, oh my God, they're about to turn, I got to jump in. Well, it's valued at $1,150 at that point. So getting in right before they turn doesn't mean you're getting it at $100, and moreover, once it's at $1,200 and transacts, the hope is that the next group, either resets it down and it goes back up, or it starts at 12 and the next exit is at 3,600, or right. I tell people, you might have bought Microsoft for $75. I'm talking way back in the day, right? You bought it at $75. You didn't buy it when it was 15. So you didn't get that. But the fact is, it's going to probably hit 250. So getting it at 75 is just fine, right?
That's right. Exactly. And so you want to kind of see, okay, what is the quality of the investment? Do they have a track record? Is this a fit for me in my heart personally? Does it resonate? All of this. And do you believe it to go this way? And is it something you want, that change in your lifestyle of that way? So those are all things that I would consider. And then you also want to see, well, where are they in their growth? How much risk is there in this? And as I look, and I know we often get kind of some arrows in our back because they say, oh, they're so big. Look, they're so big. They're already at 270 locations or whatever we're at right now. And I think about it, and you have to then look at the industry. And the industry is only 7% consolidated. So there's 93% of orthodontists are not a part of an OSO. And Smile Doctors makes up about half of that 7%. So we're only about 3.5% of the entire market, maybe not even that. And I believe that, and I think I've heard Chris Benson say this, I believe that it'll get probably to about 30, 35, maybe 40% consolidated. So where we have as far as runway goes, it's huge. And I do think the landscape will change, but I always think that there's going to be room for everybody, whatever that is. Whether you're a solo practice and your boutique practice, your group practice, you're an OSO, whatever it is, you want to do what you're passionate about, where you have The best opportunity to treat your patients in the best way, balanced with your lifestyle and your financial goals. And so that's always the advice I give. We don't want anyone to be a part of Smile Doctors who does not wholeheartedly want to be a part of us. And I know other groups would feel the exact same. No one wants somebody who's uncomfortable there. It just doesn't make for a good partnership. It's not someone that is an independent doctor. I wouldn't want to partner with the goofball that I didn't fully trust and love and thought, hey, if times are going to get tough and we got to hunker down, I know this person has my back and I have theirs. That's the people that.
And if you hear my dog barking in the background, I apologize. He's decided to join the conversation.
You're good.
By the way, you were quoted this morning, by the way. Just this morning, you were quoted by Chris Benson.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, because someone asked a question about OSOs and DSOs, and I'm going to read to you. He said, as Scott Law told me years ago, before the term OSO was used, quote, if you've seen one DSO, you've seen one DSO. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely true. They're all different. They're all unique. They all have their pros and their cons and what they do. And the one question that, again, you didn't quite get to, and I wanted, if you don't mind taking just a small little amount of time, we hear 3 to 5 years as a timeline historically. Why is it 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great one, because typically what it is, as a company, so there's a couple reasons. So the private equity groups, they have outside investors who expect a return within that time frame. And so they kind of have a certain amount of time to deploy that cash, and then they want to get that investment back. And as private equity firms, they're constantly raising funds. So you'll hear like Fund 1, Fund 2, Fund 3 as they kind of go. And so they want to make that change. But there's also the accordion debt, which is a way to put it, where you can draw on these funds. If you're performing well enough, you can draw on and borrow in order to go and to continue to grow. And so you have a certain allotment of cash that way that you can draw on. Once that goes down, then you either need to go and reapply for further debt in order to grow, or you need to transact. And so typically it's 3 to 5 years is kind of that window for what that can work with.
Okay. No, I mean, I appreciate it, because again, your time here today, you are such sort of a complete Renaissance man from every angle, and you raise cattle. I mean, that's.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we still have to hook up on that. I need some of your barbecue, some of your.
You give me a cow and I'll give you barbecue. We've been talking about it. And for those out there who don't know, I keep kosher. And so Scott, one of the, joking aside, I have to say this, Scott, so people can hear this. The first time I ever really spoke to you about the OSO, DSO world was a couple of years ago at Fishbein Fundamentals, where the man, the myth, the legend himself actually came down to Pensacola to sit and chat with Doug and I. And that night we were sitting by ourselves and we're talking. And I remember you telling me you raise cattle, and I told you I keep kosher and I can't. You raise like a combination of Wagyu and Black Angus, right?
Right. That's right.
I'll never forget. Talk to me about anything else, I'll forget it. I don't remember what my wife sends me to the supermarket to buy, but I know that you raise Wagyu Black Angus. They come in the shape of a steak, right? You grow yours. So they look like a giant T-bone. You just take the skin off and put them on a grill. But we were talking and I said, if I join Smile Doctors, you have to be able to get me 2 cattle? Cows?
Yeah.
I don't know what the term is, but you're going to give me 2 animals with 4 legs each.
Yeah. Some calves. I didn't know what you wanted. Some feeder calves. You're going to take care of whatever.
And he starts telling me like, oh, absolutely. Sure. You can have 2. And I learned what it costs to buy a calf. And I think I'm like one of the 5 Jews in the world who knows what it costs to buy a calf, to feed it, to fatten it up for slaughter. I mean, like I learned everything about it. And so anyway, for those of you out there thinking about wanting to join Smile Doctors, I would implore you to speak to Scott about the ability to buy a calf before you join. I kid, because he doesn't have that many, but it just underscores the fact that you're truly a very well-rounded man, from Jocko Willing to raising cattle to starting an OSO. I mean, there's just been a remarkable amount of information you've shared with me over the years. And I consider myself truly fortunate, not just to be a part of Smile Doctors, but to be your partner and to be a friend of yours, and to have you in my life when I have a question or need counsel on something. So thank you for that, Scott.
Well, you're very welcome, Glenn. You are, and I hope you know it, but you are a gift to the industry of how you bring people together, what you share openly, honestly, and very candidly. And yeah, I think you've changed orthodontics with your meeting with orthopreneurs, with just people thinking differently about orthodontics and about our role inside of it. So thank you.
Radical candor. I will always give you the honest scoop, I promise. And so I'm going to leave you with a quick note, a story about Dana Fender, which I promised I would tell you. And, and a final question. The story is that when we were talking to all the groups, and I got to tell you, every group we spoke to was full of good people, and I tell it to everybody. I went to dinner, and Dana Fender was there, and I think you were there at that dinner. And Jay Hedrick was there, and Ryan Hurley was there, and Michael Crosby. There's some good people at that dinner. And I remember Dana just stood up and sort of, I really want you to be a part of the group. What is it going to take, Glenn? And, anybody who knows Dana Fender knows Dana's passion. Yeah. And he's got this great accent from Georgia, and you don't know what to make of it. I didn't know Dana at all. Uh-huh. And so I made some phone calls because I couldn't imagine that anybody could be as passionate and honest and forthright as this guy was holding himself out to be. Mm-hmm. And every phone call I made asking about Dana was better than the one before it. I'd never heard anybody get the kind of accolades that Dana Fender. Like somebody once said, I don't want to mention a name because I don't want to embarrass them, but they were, I think, at a meeting in Vegas, and they had told Dana earlier that they'd never had this one, a king crab leg or something like that. And lo and behold, at their table shows up this massive thing of king crab legs, right? Because he just knew and remembered. And he's just that kind of guy. And so that ultimately is one of the things that really tipped the scale in the favor of us joining Smile Doctors, was that if you got founders like you and Dana, then that's the kind of organization I want to be a part of. And so that was the quick little anecdote. The question I'll ask you as I let you go.
Yep.
So you said Scotty told you had $4 million and you were going to use it all up, and then you were going to hopefully then turn around and find. Did you use up all $4 million?
I did. I used it all up. Yeah. So that's what it costs in order to get everything going with new space building. I bought a few practices as well with that, so that then our EBITDA could be in a place where we could get a multiple on EBITDA. That's always how your valuation is figured, is on your EBITDA. It's not on your potential or what the market could be, but it is really of what's your performance. And here's an example, Glenn, if you're okay. Like, please. I know you and I had spoken. We'd spoken in the past. I think years and years ago.
Oh yeah, I talked about the Farm League.
Yeah, about joining, right? And I think we welcomed conversations like that, and we looked at it and we said, "Hey, you're not ready." We saw your growth trajectory. We knew where you and Doug were going. But if we would have purchased you then for what you were worth, there would have been a lot of resentment, I would assume. And because you guys never were able to reach that point. And so I think we kept in contact. You learned a lot about private equity and about OSOs and everything. You did all your due diligence, as you should. But that's some of the conversations we have. We don't want partners who are later going to be resentful or upset. We want people who are going to be thrilled and are going to be amazing partners as we all push forward. And so, as fate would have it, we were able to hold hands later, and very grateful for that time. Not only you benefited financially, but also mentally, and you're a better partner for it.
But you did use up that 4 million.
I did.
Yeah, a man of his word.
It did pay off. Yeah.
Right on. Well, you said what he was going to tell you, and I was curious to know if it actually happened. So
yeah, that's right.
I can't thank you. I know how busy you are, and I just want to say thank you again for being on this today. You're always a pleasure. And when you get on a third time on the Orthopreneurs podcast, we got to get you a jacket. An Orthopreneurs jacket for a three-time champion. So I don't know if we make one big enough for you, Scott. I got to be honest. These days, you're getting big.
Awesome.
Anyway, thank you for being on here. And again, if anybody has any questions for Scott of any kind, feel free to hit me up and I'll connect you guys. And just again, thank you from the bottom of my heart, Scott.
Awesome. Love you, Glenn. Thanks, man.
Likewise. Take care.